In alhamdulillah wa salat wa salam ala wa rasulullah. Yesterday we spoke about the rights that the wife has over her husband. And just as we said yesterday, Islam is a check and balance. Just as a law gives the woman rights over men, men also have rights over us. That's the justice of Allah. And when we speak about the rights of the husband over his wife, Allah mentions this in the Quran. Allah tells us in the interpretation of the meaning, and they, women, have rights over their husbands in regards to living expenses, and the husbands have rights over them, which is in regards to obedience and respect. Allah tells us in this verse that each of the spouses has rights over the other, and that the husband has one particular right over his wife that she does not have over him. And that's because this is the wisdom of Allah, and that is obedience. A man does not have to obey his wife, but a woman has to obey her husband, because that's just the way Allah made us. Men are supposed to be the rulers over us, the leaders over us. A woman is not supposed to lead or rule over a man. So you must obey your husband unless your husband tells you to do something that contradicts Allah. For example, if your husband told you that he doesn't want you wearing hijab, you don't obey him then. If your husband told you that he doesn't want you to pray, you cannot obey him, because there is no obedience to the creation over the creator. And again, Allah tells us that the men are the protectors and maintainers, and they're also the people who are in charge over us. They lead us. So the right of obedience is something that Allah has given to men, but not to us women. So as long as your husband is not telling you to do something that contradicts Islam, for example, that's why I tell you guys, if you want to work when you're married, you better put it in your marriage contract. Because your husband can tell you to quit your job. He can tell you he does not want you working. He wants you to stay home and take care of the kids. And you have to obey him. So that's why if you want to work or go to school, you better have it in your marriage contract. Because he's to be obeyed. He's the provider. He's the maintainer, not you. And also another right that the husband have is you have to make yourself available to him physically. We talked about this. Intimacy. We talked about if a woman refuses to respond to her husband's call for intimacy, not only has she committed a horrific sin, but he doesn't even have to pay your living expenses. The only excuse a woman can use to refuse her husband intimacy is if she's sick or she's on her menses, because Islam forbids having relations on your menses, or unless she's making up one of her fasts from Ramadan. But other than that, you have to respond to your husband's call. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when a man calls his wife to bed and she refuses, and he goes to sleep angry at her, the angels will curse her until the morning. So you cannot refuse your husband. And on the other hand, you brothers need to respond to your wives too. The Prophet also spoke about how important it is for you men to respond to your wives as well. It's a check and balance. You don't want your wife to end up getting tempted, to go somewhere else or to divorce you because you won't take care of business with her. So you need to respond to her too. Also, another right that the husband have over the wife is the right to tell you who cannot enter his home. If your husband says that he doesn't want certain people in his house, you cannot sneak them in. That goes for your family. That's why it's very important that you marry a man who gets along with your family. Because if your husband doesn't like your mother, if your husband doesn't like your brother, your sister, your father, he can say, I don't want them in my house. And you have to obey him. Because he is your guardian, not your parents anymore. Does everybody understand that? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it is not permissible for a woman to fast when her husband is present unless she has his permission, or to allow anyone into his home without his permission. And whatever she gives in charity from his money without his consent will count as a blessing for him too. And also during his final sermon before he died, the Prophet said, treat women kindly, for they are prisoners and you have no power over them than that. That as long as they are not guilty of lewdness, but if they are guilty of lewdness, then refuse to share their beds. And if you have to hit them, do it without causing any pain or harm to them. But if they come back to obedience, then don't annoy them. And your rights over them are that they not allow anyone whom you dislike to sit in your home. That they not allow anyone whom you dislike to enter your home. And their rights over you are that you feed and clothe them well. So here the Prophet is speaking about if you married to a woman, when he talks about a woman who is guilty of lewdness, this is a woman that doesn't wear hijab. Your wife refuses to wear hijab. You're supposed to, first of all, refuse the bed. You tell her, look, if I hear that you sneaking out the house without a hijab on again, I am not gonna sleep with you. And then you find out that she still went out the house without a hijab, then you refuse to share the bed with her. And then if she continues to not wear the hijab, then you can hit her, but don't hit her in a way to cause pain or hurt her. It's just a way to show that you are just so upset about it. Okay? And then if she refuses still, then that's when you seek a divorce against her. Hitting her is a last resort. That's the result right before divorce. So the only type of woman that a man can really put his hands on is a woman who refuses to wear hijab. That's a woman who is guilty of open lewdness. That's a woman who doesn't wear hijab. And then he can divorce her. Does everybody understand the meaning of that hadith? Open lewdness. That is, she's not wearing hijab. Okay? So this is a right your husband has. If he tells you he doesn't want your family in his house, you cannot allow your family to come over and visit. You have to obey your husbands. Okay? Also, that's the same hadith. Okay, also another right that the husband have over the wife is your husband can tell you that he doesn't want you going anywhere without his approval. What does that mean? That's why if you want to work, it needs to be put in your marriage contract before marriage, because your husband can tell you that he doesn't want you leaving the house to go to work. He wants you to stay home and take care of the kids. Okay? And be safe. If your husband tells you that he doesn't want you going out, hanging out with the sisters, you can't do that. If he tells you he doesn't want you hanging out with your family and friends, you can't do that. You can't even visit your parents unless your husband approves. Does everybody understand that? That's his right. Because again, the home is supposed to be the protection for the woman. The home is the woman's domain. That's supposed to be your palace. The place where you can take off your hijab and relax. The place where you can be safe. Where you can be protected. You have food, clothing, everything you need. No need to go out the house. So if your husband tells you that he doesn't want you going out the house anywhere, then you can't go without his approval. Let your husband know. And again, if a woman is indulging in sinful actions, her husband is her guardian, and Allah is going to hold the husband accountable for not dealing with his wife. For example, he has a wife that doesn't wear hijab, that falls on him. He has a wife that likes to hang out in the streets all day, that falls on him. And so the husband has a right to discipline his wife. Discipline consists of first verbally admonishing a person. That doesn't mean that the men go around beating up on their wives. We don't do that. The Prophet Muhammad never hit any of his wives. Discipline consists of a verbal admonishment. And if the woman continues to commit the sin, then that's when the man refuses to sleep with her. And then if she still continues, that's when he can show his frustration by hitting her lightly, but not to cause her any pain. And after that, it's divorce. If you drive your husband to the point where he wants to hit you, then you should know that means he's done with you. You're looking at a divorce. And the hit is to embarrass more than anything else. Remember, the Prophet never hit any of his wives. But they all made him so angry one time that he was going to divorce them all. He separated himself from them for 40 days. For a whole month, not 40, for a whole month. For 29 days. That's how mad they made him. And Allah asked him, do y'all want me to replace y'all with better wives, with better wives for him? But he never put his hands on them. But he refused to be around them for 29 days. Okay, so the husband, he's the imam of the household. So if the wife is doing something that she doesn't have any business doing, it's going to fall upon him, and he has the right to admonish you and try to get you to come back to what is right. So thus, those are the rights that the husbands have over the wives. Number one, the right to be obeyed, as long as he's not telling you to do something that contradicts what Allah says, like not wearing hijab. Number two, the right to be made available to. In other words, the right to intimacy. Number three, he has the right to declare who can enter his home. Number four, he has the right to deny his wife access outside the home. And then the last right he has is to discipline a wife who is indulging in sinful actions, such as not wearing hijab, hanging out in the streets, or whatever. And that consists of verbal admonishment, refusing the bed, and then possible divorce. Okay? And just like with a woman, just like with a man, whenever a woman fails to give a man his rights, that's grounds for a divorce. But men have another option too that we don't have as women, and that is the right to marry another wife. So if you don't want to drive your husband into the arms of another wife, then you better obey him, make yourself accessible to him, and try to be the best Muslim wife you can be. Because a good wife is hard to come by nowadays. And men who do have a good one, they cherish her. They hold on to her. Okay? All right. So we'll stop right here for today. If you guys have any questions or comments, inshallah, you can type them on the screen. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta